There are moments in life so unexpected, so impossible to predict, that when they arrive they do not feel real at first. They feel like the kind of news meant for someone else, the kind of story people hear about but never imagine becoming part of. And yet this moment, this very strange and sacred moment, has your name written all over it. Because someone, somewhere, made a decision about you long before you knew it was happening. A decision so significant that when the truth reaches you, your hands may tremble before your mind fully understands what has changed. Don't skip, because what is unfolding around you now did not begin yesterday. It began in silence, in hidden observations, in years of unnoticed watching. There was a person whose life crossed yours in ways you never fully understood. Someone with means, someone respected, someone whose name carried weight in rooms you have never entered. To the outside world they appeared complete, powerful, untouchable even. Yet beneath that polished surface was a quiet emptiness, a loneliness few ever noticed. Wealth surrounded them, yes, but comfort did not. Success followed them, yes, but peace did not. They had everything many dream of, and still spent countless nights wondering why none of it felt meaningful. Because there comes a point in some lives when money stops impressing the one who has too much of it. And they begin searching for something rarer. Something real. Something human. And somehow, without trying, you became that answer. It was not because of status. Not because of appearance. Not because you performed for attention. No, the thing that reached this person was something much quieter than that. It was the way you carried kindness when no one rewarded you for it. The way you remained genuine in a world full of masks. The way your heart stayed soft even after disappointment should have hardened it. They noticed things you assumed no one saw. The respect you gave strangers. The warmth in your voice when speaking to those who could offer you nothing. The way you kept showing up with dignity, even in seasons when life gave you very little back. Stay till the end, because what touched them most was not one grand act. It was the pattern of who you were when you thought nobody important was paying attention. And while others may have overlooked you, this person did not. They watched quietly. Sometimes from nearer than you realized. Sometimes through stories told by others. Sometimes through brief encounters that seemed insignificant to you but lingered in their mind far longer than you would ever guess. To you, those moments were ordinary. Forgettable, perhaps. But to them, those moments became proof. Proof that people like you still existed. Proof that goodness had not disappeared from the world. Proof that not everyone was driven by greed, image, or self-interest. And for a person who had spent much of life surrounded by performance and pretense, that realization shook them more deeply than you know. Then came the thought they could not escape. If I leave everything behind one day, who deserves it? At first, they considered family. Then acquaintances. Then business partners. But every name they reviewed felt tied to obligation, politics, expectation. None of them felt right. Because wealth, when given without wisdom, can become a burden. And this person understood that. They did not want their life's work handed to hands that would waste it, or to hearts that valued the money more than the meaning behind it. So they kept returning, strangely, repeatedly, to you. To the one who never asked for anything. To the one who had no idea their name was being carried in the private thoughts of someone powerful. To the one who may have felt unseen by the world, while being remembered by someone far beyond your awareness. Can you feel the weight of that? Somewhere behind closed doors, your name was spoken in serious conversations. Documents were reviewed. Decisions were made. Signatures were placed on paper. And while you were living ordinary days, worrying about your future, questioning your direction, wondering when life would finally shift, something extraordinary was already being arranged in silence. Not because of luck. Not because of chance. But because the impact of your character reached farther than your eyes could measure. Yet here is where the story becomes even more emotional. This person did not leave everything to you merely because they admired you. No, there was another reason. A deeper one. A reason they told almost no one. You reminded them of someone. Perhaps someone they once loved deeply. Perhaps someone they lost too soon. Perhaps even a version of themselves they had buried beneath ambition and years of survival. There was something in your spirit, your voice, your presence, that awakened old emotions they thought were gone forever. Around you, even from a distance, they felt something soften inside them. Something heal. Something return. And when a person who has spent years emotionally numb suddenly feels warmth again, they never forget the source of it. That is why this was not merely inheritance. It was gratitude. It was trust. It was their final way of saying, what I built should belong to someone whose heart understands what truly matters. But the full truth, the identity, the reason your name was chosen over everyone else. That part of the story has not surfaced completely yet. Because when the final revelation reaches you, when you discover exactly who this person was to you, and why your connection runs deeper than you ever imagined, you will understand that this was never just about wealth. It was about a hidden bond. A forgotten thread. A connection buried in the past, waiting for the right moment to be uncovered. And when that truth is finally spoken aloud, everything you thought you knew about your own story may begin to change. Because the person who left you everything was not a stranger. And in part 2, you'll discover the first clue to who they truly were. The first clue did not arrive with celebration, it arrived with confusion. Because when the message first reaches you, whether through a letter, a call, a document, or a conversation that feels almost unreal, your mind will not rush to excitement. No, it will rush to disbelief. You will wonder if there has been some mistake. Some misunderstanding. Why would a person of such influence choose you? Why would someone with endless options place your name above every other possibility? And that is when the silence around this mystery begins to break, slowly, carefully, like a locked door opening 1 inch at a time. Stay till the end, because the answer begins not with money, but with memory. There was a history connected to you that you never fully knew. A thread stretching backward further than your awareness. The wealthy person who chose you did not simply discover you one day and make a random decision. No, they had known of you far longer than you realize. Long before your recent seasons. Long before the struggles that shaped you. Long before you became the person standing in the present moment. In some way, hidden, indirect, or forgotten, they had been connected to your life from the very beginning. Perhaps not in daily contact, perhaps not in obvious ways, but enough to know more about your story than you ever imagined. And that is when the truth begins to sting in the strangest way. Because the person who believed in you most, may have been someone you barely noticed. Someone whose eyes watched your journey quietly while you were focused on surviving your own life. Someone who saw potential in you before you had evidence of it yourself. There were moments in your life when you felt dismissed, underestimated, unseen by the people around you. Moments when you wondered whether your kindness mattered. Whether your effort mattered. Whether anyone truly recognized the person you were becoming behind all the struggle. But while those thoughts lived inside you, there was one person who never doubted what they saw in your spirit. One person who looked at your life and thought, they do not yet know who they are, but one day they will. That person carried that belief privately. And over time, it became more than admiration. It became intention. Because they began seeing their legacy not as buildings, accounts, investments, or possessions, but as something that should empower the right soul after they were gone. Someone who would not merely spend what was given, but steward it with wisdom. Someone whose heart was not corrupted by greed. Someone who knew the value of struggle, and therefore would understand the value of blessing. And every time they looked at the people around them, the polished faces, the opportunists, the relatives who hovered near wealth but never near love, none of them felt worthy. None of them felt right. Only you remained in their thoughts. But here is where the mystery deepens. The reason they chose you was not based only on who you are now. It was based on what they believed you were becoming. They saw a future in you that even you had not stepped into yet. They sensed leadership in your quietness. Depth in your pain. Vision in your questions. They noticed how hardship did not destroy your softness, it refined it. And that told them something rare: if someone can remain kind while carrying wounds, they can be trusted with more. If someone can remain humble while having little, they may remain grounded when given much. So while you were doubting yourself, they were planning for you. While you were wondering whether your life was moving too slowly, they were telling others, watch this one. Their time has not come yet, but it will. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine living ordinary days while somewhere, behind closed doors, a powerful person was speaking about your future with certainty greater than your own? And still, there is one detail not yet revealed. The most shocking part of all. Because when the first official records are shown, when names, signatures, and legal confirmations begin surfacing, one truth will hit harder than the inheritance itself. You recognize the name. Not immediately in full, not all at once, but enough for your heart to pause. Enough for old memories, family stories, fragments of conversations, forgotten faces, or buried questions from your past to begin rearranging themselves in your mind. Because this person was not just someone who knew you. They were tied to your story in a way that was kept hidden, perhaps intentionally, perhaps painfully, perhaps for reasons you are only now beginning to understand. And when the final connection is explained, you may discover that what was concealed from you for years was never meant to stay buried forever. Something important is waiting for you. Because the wealth was only the surface of the revelation. The true shock lies in who this person actually was to you. And why they remained in the shadows until now. In Part 3, the hidden relationship will begin to come into focus, and the reason they stayed silent may change how you see your entire past. There are truths so life-altering that when they finally rise to the surface, they do not arrive all at once, they unfold in pieces, almost mercifully, because the heart could not absorb the full weight of them in a single moment. And this is one of those truths. Because the more you learn about the person who left everything behind for you, the more one impossible realization begins pressing against your mind: this was never a distant admirer, never a random benefactor, never simply a wealthy soul who happened to notice you. No, this was someone bound to your story in a way that explains why their attention always felt strangely intentional, even when you never understood it at the time. The hidden relationship begins with whispers, with half-told family stories, awkward pauses in conversations, old names that were rarely spoken, and details from your past that suddenly stop looking accidental. Stay with this, because the pieces that once felt disconnected are beginning to align. You may remember moments from years ago. An older figure appearing briefly at an event, someone asking unusual questions about you, a gift sent without explanation, help arriving during a difficult season from a source no one could clearly identify. At the time, those moments seemed random. Small. Forgettable. But they were not random at all. They were traces. Evidence that this person had been nearer to your life than you ever knew. And then comes the revelation that changes everything. They were family. Not in the ordinary, obvious way that attends every gathering and sits in every photograph. No, this was a branch of your story kept at a distance. A relative whose place in your life had been obscured by time, conflict, secrecy, or circumstances no one ever fully explained to you. Perhaps a grandparent whose presence was erased by family division. Perhaps an estranged uncle, aunt, or elder relative whose name became too painful or complicated for others to mention. Perhaps someone whose connection to you was known by only a few and buried beneath years of silence. However the truth arrives, one thing becomes clear: your life and theirs were always linked, even when the connection was hidden. And once that truth lands, 1,000 old questions suddenly feel different. Why did certain people act strangely whenever that name came up? Why did family conversations go quiet around certain topics? Why were there gaps in the story of your past no one seemed eager to explain? Because some families do not bury truth because it is unimportant. They bury it because it is powerful. But while others kept silence, this person never forgot you. Even from afar, they followed your life in the only ways they could. They heard about your struggles. They heard about your character. They heard how you kept moving through hardship without becoming bitter. They heard how you treated people. How you carried yourself. How you endured more than many knew. And each update confirmed what they already believed: the distance between you did not erase the bond they felt. If anything, it deepened it. Because sometimes the people who love us most are not the loudest in our lives, they are the ones who carry their love quietly, waiting for the moment it can finally be felt. Yet here is what may hit your heart hardest of all. They wanted to come closer. More than once. There were moments. Real moments, when they considered stepping out of the shadows, revealing everything, and telling you who they were. There were times they thought about reaching out directly, about sitting across from you and explaining the truth face to face. But something always stopped them. Pride, perhaps. Family pressure. Fear of reopening old wounds. Fear that the timing was wrong. Fear that after so many silent years, they no longer knew how to bridge the distance. So instead of forcing a reunion they feared might fail, they chose another way to reach you. They decided that if they could not fully enter your life while living, they would transform your life when gone. Think about the depth of that decision. To carry care for someone in silence for years, and then arrange your final act on earth to become their beginning. That is not casual generosity. That is love delayed by circumstance. That is someone saying, in the only way left available to them, I could not stand beside you openly, but I never stopped thinking of you. I never stopped believing in you. And when the time came to decide what mattered most, it was you. Don't skip, because the emotional weight of this story has not reached its peak yet. Because along with the inheritance comes something even more valuable than wealth: proof. Letters. Notes. Recorded words. Personal instructions. Private statements left behind not merely to transfer possessions, but to explain the heart behind the choice. And in those words, you may encounter something that stops time around you. Perhaps an admission of regret. Perhaps an apology for the years lost. Perhaps a confession that they watched your life with pride from afar. Perhaps a sentence so personal, so direct, so full of withheld love that reading it feels like hearing a voice from another lifetime finally speak. And when you absorb those words, the inheritance stops feeling like money. It begins feeling like recognition. Like closure. Like an answer to the ache you carried whenever you wondered whether unseen goodness in your life had ever mattered to anyone. Because it mattered. It mattered more than you knew. And yet, even now, one final truth remains unrevealed. Not everyone is at peace with what was left to you. Because when wealth shifts unexpectedly, when hidden decisions overturn expectations, when someone outside the expected circle becomes the chosen one, people talk. People question. People reveal sides of themselves they kept hidden. And the moment others learn why you were chosen, the real storm begins. Because in part 4, you'll discover how those around this inheritance react, and why the person who chose you left one final instruction that changes everything. The moment the truth becomes known, the room changes. Conversations that once sounded polite begin carrying tension beneath every word. Faces that smiled at you before now study you differently, more carefully, more sharply, as if they are trying to understand how someone they underestimated became the center of a decision they never saw coming. Because when unexpected favor enters a person's life, it does more than change circumstances, it reveals hearts. And that is exactly what begins happening around you. Stay with this. Because the inheritance itself is only part of the story. What follows may teach you more about people than anything money ever could. Those who assumed they were entitled to everything begin asking questions in tones that sound calm on the surface but restless underneath. Why you? How did this happen? What did they see in you? Some ask with curiosity, others with disbelief, and a few with something far less comfortable, resentment disguised as confusion. Because in their minds, they had already written their version of the future. They had already imagined where that wealth would go, who would receive it, how the legacy would continue. Your name was never part of their expectation. And now, your presence in that story feels to them like a disruption they cannot easily accept. But then comes the detail that silences the room. The person who chose you did not leave behind a vague wish. They left instructions. Specific. Intentional. Personal. And among those instructions was one message repeated with unmistakable clarity: that this decision was made knowingly, willingly, and without pressure. That their choice was deliberate. That no challenge, complaint, or emotional appeal should overturn it. In other words, they anticipated resistance. They knew some would question you. They knew some would doubt the decision. They knew some might try to make you feel undeserving. And so before they left this world, they protected you from the very backlash they knew would follow. Think about that for a moment. Even in their final planning, they were still thinking ahead for you. Still shielding you. Still ensuring that when the truth emerged, no one could rewrite their intentions. That realization alone may move you more deeply than the inheritance itself. Because protection is a form of love. Preparation is a form of care. And they did both for you in silence. Yet the final instruction they left behind was not about legal matters. It was not about accounts or property or signatures. It was about you. In their private letter, written not for the public, not for the family, not for lawyers or witnesses, but for your eyes alone, they explain the reason they made this choice. And the words strike deeper than anyone around you can understand. They write that wealth means nothing in the hands of someone without character. But in the hands of a person with integrity, it becomes a tool for impact. They write that they watched your life from afar and saw not perfection, but resilience. Not privilege, but perseverance. Not ease, but quiet strength. And then comes the line that may stay with you forever. I am not leaving this to the person who expected it. I am leaving it to the person who earned my trust without ever asking for it. Read that again in your spirit. Not because you demanded. Not because you pursued. Not because you manipulated. But because your life, your choices, your heart, your way of being, spoke for you when you did not know anyone was listening. And suddenly, everything shifts. What first looked like a shocking external blessing now feels like something much more intimate, a final affirmation of who you are. Proof that character leaves impressions long before rewards appear. Proof that unseen integrity is never truly unseen. Proof that while many notice noise, some people notice substance. But even as this realization settles into your heart, another unfolds. This inheritance was never meant to simply make your life easier. It was meant to change your path. Because tucked within the instructions is one more request, one that turns this entire story into something larger than personal gain. They ask that what they built not end with possession, but continue through purpose. They make it clear they did not choose you merely to receive their wealth. They chose you because they believed you would do something meaningful with it. Build something. Heal something. Create something. Transform not just your life, but the lives of others in ways they no longer could. That is when the full weight of their choice lands. They did not just see you as worthy of receiving. They saw you as worthy of carrying legacy. And that kind of trust can humble a person more than any amount ever could. Still, with every great turning point comes a quiet internal question. Am I truly ready for this? Because being chosen changes a person. Being trusted changes a person. Being handed not only blessing but responsibility changes a person. And in part 5, that inner transformation begins, when you realize this inheritance is not simply a gift from the past, but the beginning of the future they believed you were born for.